I'm SuperSandbag, the developer of Lovely Sweet Dream and the Dream Emulator bundle in Rivals of Aether. This direct will be special, as it's the first time I'll be revealing and releasing an accompanying fighter's full stage. I hope you stick around to catch the first look at the stage in action. But before that, let's talk about Dream Emulator's history. I feel to best understand the history of this content, we should look at the wider history of the video game works of Osamu Sato. I believe the best way to describe Sato is as an influential digital artist that helped pave the way for an understanding of digital mediums as art, particularly in terms of video games. Although very few of his projects became well known, many of them had a very clear impact on the medium. The first game he worked on was a 1994 PC game, Eastern Mind: The Lost Souls of Tong No. This was an experimental take on the point-and-click adventure genre, focusing on telling a story based on Buddhist philosophies. Rin, the protagonist of this game, loses his soul and has to travel to the island of Tong No and be reborn into several different lives in order to regain it. The game had a sequel in 1995, Chu Tang, which was once considered lost media until 2013. His third and fourth games were Roly Poly's Nanakurobi Yaoki and Roly Poly's World Tour, both of which were edutainment games released for the PC in 1997. These games follow the dog Pon and his friends and acquaintances in various misadventures, with the intent to teach children things such as the English alphabet. These games were also considered lost media until very recently. The first game was found again just last year, and a copy of World Tour finally surfaced within the past few months. The fifth game is what this content is based on, the bizarre and unique 1998 PlayStation game, LSD Dream Emulator. It's an exploration game where you walk around in various dreams, based on a decade's worth of dreams from co-designer Hiroko Nishikawa's dream journal. Many of her dreams were also recorded into the art book Lovely Sweet Dream, which was packaged alongside the game and album. This book is where the fighter gets her name from. You might also sometimes have dreams in the form of cutscenes or texts. Many times, you may notice different looks in places you visit, which can tell you the kind of mood you're dreaming in at the moment. Since its release, LSD Dream Emulator has easily become one of the most influential pieces of interactive art, inspiring many independent developers to continue in its footsteps. Sato's final two games were both PlayStation games. In 1999 was Tokyo Wakusei Planet Tokyo, an adventure game that follows Iken as he defends his city from an alien attack. The last game in 2000, Rhythm and Face, is a rhythm game with a unique twist of, well, creating a face. Although Osamu Sato is no longer working on game content, he's still very active. In fact, earlier this year, he released a new album, Grateful in All Things. I highly recommend checking out his recent discography, as he has absolutely not lost his touch with incredible psychedelic music. Now, let's start talking about the Dream Emulator bundle content, starting with the fighter. Lovely Sweet Dream was designed to represent the whole of LSD Dream Emulator, rather than just one character. After all, the game doesn't even have a protagonist. So, I needed to find a character that could adapt to the entirety of the game, and the option I went with was the Ghost Woman from Violence District. She already shows up in multiple roles, her ghostly nature allows her to take on stranger actions, and she's already one of the more popular entities, I would guess right below the mascot Linen and the fan favorite Gray Man. However, Linen also shows up in very important actions, and is technically as present in this moveset as Ghost Woman is, which really makes Lovely Sweet Dream more of a team. Before we begin looking at Lovely Sweet Dream's moves, we first need to talk about her primary gimmick, the Dream Graph. In the original game, this graph would show up at the end of every dream to indicate what the mood of your dream was. Here it'll function similarly, telling you what dream mood you're having at the moment. When you're far enough into certain parts of the graph, your moves then gain influence, which means they'll change properties and looks. Upper makes moves do more damage at the cost of less knockback, and downer deals more knockback with less damage. Static puts influence on grounded moves, while dynamic puts it onto aerials. Here's an example of a downer and upper F-tilt. Notice how much further the lower maple is sent, while the higher one took much more damage. As for how influence is attained, well, that's for me to know and you to find out. Seriously though, the whole point of this fighter is to be obtuse and confusing, and a big part of her design is based on taking time to discover or figure out what actions will result in what kind of influence. Now, let's take a look at her basic actions. Since all the moves come from the same game, the corner will show what area of the game you can find these references instead. Now, let's take a look at her normal moves. Her jab is a big kiss. It exists pretty far from her, so it's pretty safe for a physical attack. F-tilt brings out the ferocious lion. It's a pretty chunky hit, and is great at keeping your opponents at bay. U-tilt is the signature action of the Ghost Woman. Her head flies in an arc, so it might be a good idea to toss it out sometimes when your opponent is trying to recover. D-tilt is a fin, which takes the form of a simple sliding move. Did you know that, according to the Dream Journal, the fin doesn't come from a shark, and is instead from a whale in shallow water? Dash attack has her leading the march of the Happy Town Soldiers. This move is very unique in that it only hits behind her, so you can try to catch opponents off guard with it. Though try not to march helplessly into someone else's move instead. They'll even follow you if you march off a cliff. Nair transforms her into graffiti found on the walls of the Violence District alleys. It covers a large distance, but be aware that you can be hit anywhere your graffiti exists. This move is also unique in that each influence gets its own art. Fair is a powerful trumpet toot. It's a fairly strong attack, but keep in mind it'll send you backwards as well. Bear is a very safe upwards projectile in the form of a tiny pterodactyl. U-Air is a multi-hit projectile in the form of the UFO. It's a bit slow, but it can turn the situation deadly if your opponent gets caught in its ascent. Dare has her literally dumpster dive. It's a 3-hit combo that ends in a meteor smash. F-Strong brings out the iconic giant head. This big baby hits the opponent a few times, and then flies away after the last hit. It's got great range, but it'll leave you open for a bit. U-Strong is another form the Ghost Woman takes, the Hanged Woman. Don't worry about her getting hurt, she's already a headless ghost. Although the hit on this move is quite large, you should try to go for an early strike. It's actually stronger than the full hit. D-Strong is the graceful dance between the Prince and Princess of Happy Town. The two will spin away from each other and come back together, each short pause in a spin dragging the opponents with them. Finally, her taunt has her pull out the lovely sweet dream. As long as you hold down the taunt button, she'll keep reading it. In practice mode, you can also set your influence with this taunt for easy lapping. Before we go on to her special moves, here's a quick look at all the influence variations on her normal moves. Next up are her special moves. N special is Dream, which ties the most directly into the Dream Graph mechanic. Most of the time, pressing it will simply reset your graph. So if you're hitting in an influence you don't want, you can simply try again. However, if the graph hits certain points, it'll glow green and you'll hear a foreboding noise. And that's your sign that N special is changed into a super move. These moves can only be used once per stock, so be careful while using them. If you hit the top left at maximum static and upper, you'll get the orrery. This giant machine can deal a whopping 60% with 4 hits, or 15% each. This one will easily turn the tide of any battle. On the bottom left, maximum static and downer, you'll get the Abyss Demon. This can be the hardest dream to land, but if you catch someone off stage with his ferocious hand, they won't be coming back up. On the top right, maximum dynamic and upper, you'll get a counting sheep. It'll bounce around as a giant projectile and deal 40% if it lands. Even the mere presence of this massive sheep will scare your opponents. And in the bottom right, maximum dynamic downer, you get the Kitsune. This fox will dash across the entire stage in a blink, and can KO at frighteningly early percents. Just be sure to aim well. Finally, there's a secret 5th dream if your graph lands on 4 points of the dream graph's face. This dream is LSD. You'll float upwards briefly, and then release an onslaught of linen. This move can frequently kill extremely early, so you only get 1 chance per game to use it. Getting these 4 points in the original game would play a series of cutscene dreams. F special is the mysterious Gray Man. In the original game, running into him would reset some of your dream progress, but since Rivals fighters generally don't have that, his role is translated into a very strange summon. If an opponent touches him, they're sent in a helpless state to the top of the stage. You can use this to follow up with a strong attack. However, if your opponent smacks you into him, the move will backfire. better be careful around him. Additionally, your opponent can try to attack him to make him disappear, but even that can still be risky. Use special is the Flying Elephant. You become a very big helpless target, but you gain a lot of distance. If you're at a safe spot, you can cancel out of the move as well. Try using the move while the influence is dynamic. You may be surprised at the distance or speed you'll get. D-Special is the main ability of the original game, Link. If your opponent tries to attack you, and you time this move correctly, you'll be sent away from them in the direction your graph points. If you're close enough, you can usually counterattack too. This can be useful for getting out of sticky situations. You can also use Link on the Giant Head, the UFO, and Grayman if you'd like to teleport on your own. Be aware that using Grayman, while the easiest of the three to link with, will send you helpless afterwards. While we're still on the topic of the fighter, let's take a look at her alt color references. Since Linen's color references aren't explained in the titles, I'll explain them here. First there's the Prince, the Flying Ghost, and the Graffiti Woman. These three Linen colors come from the variations in the Lovely Sweet Dream book. Then there's the Hoop and Stick Girl, with the black space cubes, a lion, with a downer texture lion, and Grayman, with how Linen appeared in the Linen Sampler album art. A Game Boy Color, the Geisha with some cutscene entities, the Princess with a soldier, the Ghost Sailor with the car, the Old Woman with the giant Minotaur, the Gunman and his victim, and finally the Monument Park Sphinx and Eiffel Tower. The last two colors are special, being based on Eastern Mind. The first is Rin and his soul, and the second is Feng Xing and the island of Tung No. These colors have some special sound effects as well. Now, let's talk about the new stage releasing today, Dream Emulator. If anything about LSD Dream Emulator deserved excess attention, it's certainly the many iconic locations in the game, so I couldn't simply choose just one. Beginning with the Aether version, you start off in where all dreaming sessions are birthed, the Bright Moon Cottage. You fight on every level of the building, where a lot of dream characters already make an appearance. Doubleface, the futon, bird cages, the pterodactyl, and the teddy bear make up the current cottage residence. While we're here, you can also see the giant astronaut in the distance at the side. Every once in a while, you may see the folks inside the building glow white and start moving around. This means you can link with them. Touching them will send you to a different location in the game. There's the lovely Happy Town, the most joyous place in the dreamscape. You fight on top of a stylistic love platform while watching the train pass by the Ferris wheel and Prince and Princess's castle. Next is the Violence District, definitely the most frightening location in the game. You fight on the harbor next to the gunman's getaway car, a faulty streetlight, and a tin can. If you look closely at the nearest warehouse, you may see a ghost. Sunface's Heave is certainly one of the most iconic scenes in the game. The birch seems to have taken a different form for this fight, but the giant Sunface doesn't seem to mind. And there's the mysterious black space, a void of floating cubes. Some of these cubes make up platforms to fight on top of. Keep an eye out for the Hoop and Stick Girl, who skips around in the background. An astute viewer may notice that, so far, there have only been 4 locations, but 5 entities to link with. Well, that's because also releasing today is the Natural World. You'll fight on top of the floating castle, which you actually couldn't access in the original game. Usually the Abyss Demon guards this area, but it seems like he's busy at the moment. To the left you can view a map of the Dream Realm, and to the right are the father and daughter. Finally, after a bit of time has passed on the linked location, you'll return back to Bright Moon Cottage. The basic version is pretty similar, but instead of linking with entities to change location, you'll just be transported to a different location about every 25 seconds. The stage rotation is always the same here, so enjoy the passive tour. Finally, all 6 stages exist as standalone bonus stages as well. I felt that in case anyone wanted to have a full fight on just one of these forms, they should be able to. If you'd like to have all of these stages on their own, please consider subscribing to the Dream Emulator Extended Bundle. The list of songs between all the LSD Dream Emulator stages is quite extensive. For now though, let's just look at the 4 on the main Dream Emulator stage. The main song on this stage is my remix of a medley of in-game tracks. The songs in the original game were all relatively short loops, so I took some of my favorites and threw them together. I hope you enjoyed this mix of bizarre songs. The other 3 songs are all originals by Osamu Sato, Funky Solution, Professional Problem, and Fried Banana. Trust me, it was very difficult to choose from just 3 songs on the album to represent in one stage. Sato's unique and memorable music style is always a pleasure to listen to. Fortunately, due to the amount of bonus stages, there's very little of this album that isn't represented. Here's a list of all the songs on each area. Each bonus stage has 2 songs. One is a Sato original, and the other is a remix from one of his friends. If a favorite song of yours didn't make it to Dream Emulator, it almost certainly is on one of these stages. To cap things off, Lovely Sweet Dream's victory song is the very end of Funky Solution. Wrapping up the Dream Emulator bundle is, of course, 2 buddies. A Fetus from the Flesh Tunnels happily chases you around, and although Linen already appears in Lovely Sweet Dream's moveset, you can now have him constantly follow you. His voice clip
Is this legal?
is a reference to the commercial for the game. As a bonus, if you play Lovely Sweet Dream with a Linen buddy, Linen will teleport to her for any actions involving him. Both of these buddies are compatible with her alternate colors. Since this bunch of content is much larger than usual, I've separated the Dream Emulator content into 2 bundles that you can find in the description. If you just like the fighter, the 2 buddies, and the main stage, you can subscribe to the Dream Emulator bundle. However, if you want that and the 6 standalone transformations, you can subscribe to the Dream Emulator Extended bundle. And if you'd like to check out all of my content, which currently includes an additional 2 fighters, 3 stages, and 10 buddies, take a look at the SuperSandbag collection. And I would once again like to thank all of the wonderful people who allowed me to use their content in this video. You can find their content in the SuperSandbag Friends collection, along with content I've used in the past. Please check all of these folks out. Circle Guy, with Adeline and White Wafers. Q-Pony, with Acid Rainbows. Michigan, with World of Nothing. Cidery, with Saji Sakamoto and Infinity Dojo. Coconut Bun, with Urotsuki, Matatsuki's Balcony, and Mushroom World. Uni99, with Matatsuki. Lucaru, with Hikaru and Shrine of Light. And of course, biggest thanks to the wonderful Rivals of Aether team that made all of this possible in the first place. On one final note, I'd like to say that today, October 22nd, marks LSD Dream Emulator's 22nd anniversary. To make something so influential that it continues to inspire game developers 2 decades later is an incredible feat, and I offer only my highest respect to Osamu Sato, Hiroko Nishikawa, and the rest of Outside Directors Company for creating such a culturally important piece. Happy birthday, LSD Dream Emulator! Finally, it looks like the Dream Emulator Direct has come to an end. Once again, I'm grateful you chose to spend your time with me. Next time, I will be going over the Cruise the World bundle, featuring my newest fighter, Venom SST. But before that, you can expect a mini-direct focusing on a big update towards the trophy pack. Until then, I wish that you have fun. Goodbye!